How you guys doing today? Pretty good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are a little awake. You're ready to go. I like that song. Give it up for the worship team for leading us in. We are in a series on miracles, and I believe this song is so perfect for where we're going because trusting in God's faithfulness is something that we all struggle with. We all look through and we all try to figure out, man, can I really trust that Jesus is who he says he is? Can I really place my faith in him? Because in any situation, we're faced with two options. One, to hold on to God's promises and to say, I'm gonna hold on to this despite my circumstances. The other option is to say, I don't know, I'm going to do my own thing my own way, and you take control. How many guys ever like taking control of your life and your situations? I love control. I need to be in control. The issue with that is, when I take control from God, things usually don't work out so well. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever been there before? You try to tell God how you're going to do your life. You tell God what you're going to do. You tell God your plans. So here's a verse. We have some notes that are going to be coming around here, and the title is Blind Trust, because there was a blind man in the Bible who was blind for his entire life. And in an instant, everything about his life changed, seemingly. So we're going to talk about this blind man and his trust in God and how we can learn from that. So I'm going to read you his whole story. And what's unique about this guy's story in terms of miracles is usually we just see the miracle that Jesus does. He comes, pick up your mat and walk, go your way, or he heals the lepers, and we just see a glimpse of their life. But with this particular guy, we get the next couple days of what happens after. And I think that is fascinating. It's one of the only times in the Bible where we see someone's life after the miracle, and we get to experience what's going on in their head. So if you have a Bible, you can pull it out. If you don't have a Bible, you can look to the screen and you can read. If we're going to go to John chapter 9, look at your neighbor and say, I like John 9. Look at your neighbor and say, I probably haven't read John 9. We're going to look back at your first neighbor and say, but I'm going to read it right now, therefore I've read it. We're just having fun. All right, let's put it up on the screen. John chapter 9, verse 1. Walking down the street, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned? Wait, that's their leading question. Who's the sinner? This man or his parents, causing him to be born blind? Jesus said to them, in the next slide, he said to them, you are asking the wrong question. You are looking for someone to blame, and there is no such cause and effect here. Look instead for what God can do. We need to be energetically at work for the one who sent me here, working while the sun shines. When the night falls, the workday is over. For as long as I'm in the world, there is plenty of light. I am the world's light. He continues. He said this, and then Jesus spit in the dust, made some clay paste with the saliva, rubbed it on the guy's eyes, and said, go wash at the pool of Siloam, Siloam which means sent. And the man went, washed, and saw. This is in your Bible, I promise you. Jesus walks up. They say, who's the sinner? And he says, spits on the ground, makes some mud, puts it on some guy's eye and says, go take a bath. Guy takes a bath, he can heal, he can see. This is a very crazy story. If you were looking at the Bible and you've never heard anything else about the Bible, maybe it's your first day here at church and you're like, I have never even opened a Bible. And this is the first story you come to. You're like, man, Jesus spitting on people. What in the world is this Jesus character about? Well, I'm going to tell you. And the key that we're going to keep in our mind the entire time, the key is that you can trust God on your journey. This is actually a little cheat for you because you get in the car and your mom or dad asks, what'd you learn in church today? You can look right up to here with the key and you can say, I learned to trust God on the journey. And tomorrow, when you're like, what did I learn in church yesterday? To trust God on the journey. And next Sunday, when Salt is up here preaching the good word, give it up for Salt. And if they ask, what did Pastor Scott talk about last week? You can say to trust God on the... Slap your neighbor and say, the journey. Don't actually slap them. I was recently in Las Vegas with my lovely wife, Charisse. Woo! Pastor Jesslyn got married out there, and so I officiated. We had a great time. And while out there, Jesselyn and I started reminiscing about a time that we were in Vegas many years ago. This was right when I came on staff as youth pastor with Pastor Ron, and we did a ministry tour with the SALT team. We went through Southern California, and we had even a couple stops in Northern California, and one of those, we actually went up from LA to go to Las Vegas because there was a church out there that we were going to be ministering to. Oh man, okay, this is the story. So, we're on our way to Las Vegas. We had two vans. Pastor Ron is driving one van, I'm driving the other van. It's myself and Jesselyn, she's in shotgun. And was anyone else in here in that? Were you in my van, Dallas? No, were you in my van? I don't remember who else was in there. I remember Josh Wyszynski and a whole bunch of people that you don't know about. Anyways, there's a group of 5 other students in my van, and we're driving up, and we get through the middle of nowhere, and we have like a 3-hour drive between nowhere and Vegas, which is like super nowhere. Like one gas station in that tire range, and so there's a long way to go. So we're going, and Pastor Ron says, hey, Scott, we're coming up at the last gas station before we get to the state line. It's going to be a ways. How are you on gas? And I'm looking, and I'm like, I'm a little under a quarter. And I'm like, we're fine. He's like, we're a little hungry, but I looked at my phone, and there was some good food places up a ways a bit, but we can hang out because I'd rather have the good food rather than like, who knows what this sketch place was that was right there with Sketch gas station. So let's hold out for the good food that's right at the state line. So we decided to go for it. So we get past that exit. We're driving. It's fun. And we're going fast. And we're getting there. We're making great time. And then all of a sudden we slow down, hit a little pocket of traffic. That's okay. It's just a little pocket, Irvin. We'll get through this in a minute. Well, an hour goes by, and we have traveled 3 miles in that hour. The brutality. The sheer brutality. I'm in a car with 5 other junior high and high school students, and we're just like sitting there, and now we're starting to get hungry. And not only hungry, but people are drinking water and doing their thing. And guess what happens when you're in the car for a long time? You gotta go, man. You gotta go. And so, Pastor Scott, I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, I know, but we're in the middle of nowhere. Literally in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of traffic. And so I remember we had to go up this hill, and it was like, all right, at the top of the hill, maybe we can see, maybe just get around, or there's traffic. So we get to the top of this hill, and I can see down, and I see for miles what seemed like 50 miles in front. And you know what I saw? Cars. Stopped. Car after car after car, row after row after row. And at this point, I realized we are doomed. We are absolutely doomed, because you know what happens to your car when you sit in traffic for an hour? Your gas gauge goes, ooh, and I was already a little low. Now I'm super low. I am like empty, and it's going below empty, and I'm like, uh-oh. We have miles to go before the next turnoff even, and the next turnoff doesn't even have a gas station or anything. It's just dirt roads out here. We're in the middle of nowhere, literally, and I am almost out of gas. I got a car full of kids who are hungry and need to go pee, and I have to make a plan. So then Pastor Ron comes on and says, bro, what are we going to do? Because we got some kids got to go pee, and like, I don't know, we just got to keep going. So we keep going down this hill, and meanwhile, the gas is now like, you know how you get to the E, and then you get below the E? Have you ever seen your parents get that far? Or you have like the miles, it's like, oh, you have 10 miles to go until you're out of gas. I hit that 20 miles ago. It was like, you have 0 miles, you have negative miles, and I'm like, oh, we're going. So I literally, we're on this hill. I turned the car off, put it in neutral, and was coasting down the hill to save gas. It was 110 degrees outside, and I was like, kids, saddle up, partners, we're going down. So literally, the car is off, we're coasting down to try to save whatever gas we can. And it takes us another hour to get down this hill, which is about a mile, and it's just getting worse, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world? So I didn't realize this at the time. What had happened was, miles up ahead, there was an oil tanker that had flipped over and exploded. And so all lanes of traffic were stopped, and they were trying to divert people, and it was just chaos. So I didn't know this, but reality was there was no hope for anyone. So we get to this point, and next thing I know, Pastor Ron says, Scott, we're not going to make it, so we're just going to go for it. Pastor Ron literally drives off onto like the side curb and starts hauling down the dirt like trench on the side of the freeway to get these kids off so that they can use the restroom. And I'm like, Pastor Ron, that is so dangerous. And then there's these semi-trucks that were pulling out, trying to like stop Pastor Ron from doing that. And I'm like, I'm not going to go up against a semi-truck. And so here's what we did. We're coming up, and eventually we got to this off-ramp. There's no place at this off-ramp, but I saw that there was what looked like a dirt road. And I had a decision to make. I said, okay, we can stay on this road. There's another 5 miles until the next real gas station, at which point we will certainly die because I am at super empty. Not even empty, but like dead empty. Or we can go on this dirt road and pray and hope, God, that something happens. You know what I'm saying? Yes and amen. All right. So I opted to not let life dictate my fate. And I said, Lord, our van is in your hands. So imagine this picture. We're in a Chrysler minivan, soccer mom full. Okay, we go on this dirt road, and I am hauling down this dirt road because I'm thinking we are certainly going to run out of gas. But at least if I have some momentum, we can coast a little bit further and then make a plan to see what's going to happen because we're certainly going to run out of gas, and we are in the middle of nowhere. It's going to take hours for anyone to get to us because all the roads are blocked. So I'm hauling down. Meanwhile, I look and I see there's a guy who followed me. You know the guy who followed me? Guy in a big 4x4 truck who's like going off-roading with us, and we're in this little minivan going over these dips. And you're trying to go, and I'm just telling the kids, hold on, and the air conditioner's off at 1,000 degrees. And literally I was just like, Lord, our life is in your hands. Because if this car runs out of gas, we're in 110-degree heat with kids got to go pee with no more water because, well, we ran out of water because we were in the car for so long. So I'm driving, hoping for Jesus to come through. I did not know what was going to happen. I did not even totally know the direction that I was going in. I just knew that here was a path that I'm going to start on and to go through. And I learned a little truth about trusting God on the journey. You don't always know where the journey is going to end up. You don't always know how things are going to unfold. But if you trust God on the journey some way or another, He will get you through. It may not be the way that you expected it or wanted it, but He will get you through. So as the story goes on, Pastor Ron ended up pulling off at a random stop. Some girls came out with blankets, and then they peed literally on the side of the road out there. That was not my van, because my van, we had trust in God. So we're going down. Literally, we see this gas station on the dirt road. It opens up. So what happened was the dirt road led to the back of a casino. There was a chain link fence that had been ripped open by someone who the Lord had provided. And we were able to drive through the chain link fence into the back parking lot of a gas station, where we were then able to coast up to the gas tank to begin filling in. The gas tank held 20 gallons. I put 21 gallons worth of gas in there. I don't know how that's mathematically possible, but we literally coasted in to save the day. All right, that's the story. And with that, yeah, that's fun. That's fun. The journey, you learn so much on the journey. You learn about who you are. You learn about what you really trust. You learn about how much you really trust in God while on the journey. And what we learn in this story with the blind man is that Jesus didn't just open the guy's eyes. He opened his heart. And there was a process. Why? Because healing is good. Salvation is better. Healing is good. Salvation is better. Sometimes you go in looking for one thing. You ask God for something, but He recognizes that you need something better. How many of you guys have ever seen my truck? My truck has a few years on it. 1999 Nissan Frontier. The guy who owned it before me did a lot of off-roading, and so it squeaks. It survives, though. And I needed to get an oil change, so I took it in for an oil change. There was what I thought I needed, and then he came back to me and said, Scott, this is very dangerous. And I said, what's dangerous about oil change? He said, your wheel's getting ready to fall off. And I said, that's probably not good. You need 4 of them to drive. If I only had 3, that would be less safe. And he says, yes, the ball bearing on it, and then he explained something mechanical, and he said it was literally just sitting there. Any massive movement or something could have caused it to pop off, and your wheel would have fallen off. And he said, well, it was pretty good that I came in for an oil change. You should fix that too while we're at it. And he said, definitely. You see, I went in for something, but I got something much greater. That's the principle with God. Sometimes we go to God asking for something, but he realizes that we need something much greater. Don't stop at the miracle when you can have the full salvation. Does that make sense? Miracles are always meant to be signs. They're meant to point us in a direction. They're meant to get us looking at God, but they are never the end goal themselves. If you want a magic trick, go on Amazon, order a deck of cards, and watch a YouTube video. Don't call on God. God is not here to be in the business of magic tricks. He is here to be in the business of changing your life in a way that will give you an abundance and a hope. So three things we learn about, three truths we learn about Jesus when we look to trust him, when we look on this journey. The first thing is that Jesus is pursuing you. Jesus is pursuing you. Pursuing. He is pursuing you. You may not notice that he is pursuing you, and that might be because you are blind. You may not be blind physically, but you might be blind spiritually. Jesus, when he was talking to the blind man, the blind man did not know who Jesus was. He simply knew another man was talking to you. How often is Jesus talking to you, trying to get your attention, and you are blind to what he's trying to do? The Pharisees even, the people who ran the church, they were blind to Jesus. It can be easy to be blinded to who God is because we get so caught up in our worlds. Are you blind to Jesus today? Are there things that you are closed off with? Things that are causing you to not trust in God? Things that are hurting your ability to trust in God? Now, that might be because of a family member. It might be because of your past. It might be because you just don't even know if Jesus is real. And it's okay to be honest. In fact, if there is something that you're having a hard time trusting God with, and you're just like, I just don't know because of this, I want you to write that on the back of your paper. Because at some level, all of us struggle with trusting in God. And that's our pursuit, to try to learn how to trust in God more. But whether it's, what college am I going to? God, am I really going to trust you with my future and my dreams because it's senior year and I'm applying to colleges and I don't know if I'm going to get in? Or maybe it's with your family. God, can I really trust you because my family's pretty whacked? Why would you put me in such a family? Or God, I've never heard you spoke to me and all these other people seem to hear you, but you don't talk to me. God, can I really trust that you care about me? Are there things that sometimes you have a hard time trusting in God for? And that's okay. And the reason why we're here is we want to help you process through those and learn so that you can trust in God. Jesus is pursuing you. In this story, he's connecting himself to the God of the Old Testament, to the God who did all these miracles in the past. At the time, there was a big feast going on called the Feast of Tabernacles. And what they do is they light up all of these lights. And that's to represent, in the Old Testament, there was this light that God used to help direct the Israelites through the desert when they were wandering around for all those years. And so those lights represent him. And Jesus says, in that, I am the light of the world. These lights that you use to remember who God was, that's me. The Pool of Siloam, it goes into detail talking about this Pool of Siloam, the place of sin. The reason why he brings that up is because the Pool of Siloam represented this time when Moses hit a rock with water and water came out, and the Israelites, who were certainly going to dehydrate and die in the middle of the desert, God provided them water. And so this pool represented that. And Jesus says, go to that pool because I give you life just like I gave you life back with the Israelites. So he's connecting himself to God, that through all of time, God has been pursuing humanity, and he is pursuing you here today. Jesus is saying, I have come to bring hope. And all people need to do to get that hope is to start trusting in God, to make that first step to say, okay, God, I don't understand everything about you, but I'm going to make that step of trust to say, I want to learn a little more. The second thing that we can trust in, the second truth about Jesus, is that he is the good doctor. That Jesus is the good doctor. In verse 6, we'll read it again. Remember, this is what happened as he was doing his doctor business. Verse 6. Jesus said this, and he spit in the dust and made clay with paste with the saliva, and he rubbed the paste on the blind man's eyes. He rubbed the paste on. One, that's kind of crazy. But here's why he's doing this. This was something that doctors would do. Saliva had regenerative properties in it, and literally it was one of the medical practices. But not only that, how many guys remember Genesis 1? What did God form man out of? That's right, the dust in the ground. Jesus is making another theological statement. The God of the Old Testament is me. You can trust in me because of what I've done again and again and again and again. And not only that, you can trust that he is the good doctor. He is the one who formed you. He is the one who created out of the dust. Would he not know how to care about you? Essentially, how many seniors do we have in the house? Woo! All right. You guys are applying for colleges, and in that process, you had to get a few letters of recommendation, yeah? Okay. So if you were applying to Harvard, for example, your odds of getting in are pretty slim, are very slim. Actually, Davis, I just found out, they had almost 100,000 people apply. And I think they've only let in like 1,000 or so far, like a 1%. Like, it's stupid how difficult it is to get in some of these colleges. But Harvard, say you want to go to Harvard, and you're trying to get in, and there's like 1,000 other people with 5.0 GPAs, and you're like, how did you get a 5.0? We only count to 4. Oh, it's on that 4.0 scale, right? They have 5.0s for some reason. Some guy walks in with a 6.0, and you're like, that's not even mathematically possible. But whatever, he walks in. Okay, and so you're trying to get a letter of recommendation. And you're like, all right, Pastor Scott, would you write me a letter of recommendation? I would love to write you a letter of recommendation. It's probably not going to get you into Harvard. I will do my very best, but it's probably not going to do it. I'm just being real. But if you had a relationship with the president of Harvard, and the president of Harvard said, hey, this person's legit, they're academically capable, you just need to let them in the school because I say so. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the president of Harvard wrote you a letter of recommendation, guess what school you're going to? You're getting into Harvard. Why? Because his authority, he has the highest authority in the institution to vouch for who you are. And that is what Jesus is doing by referencing the Old Testament, because God is the highest authority in the universe to vouch for who he is. And we have the God of the universe saying, this is my boy. You should trust in him. You can place your hopes in him because I vouch for him. So sometimes when we're struggling to trust in God because we're like, God, I haven't seen this in my life, God is saying, no, look, I trust Jesus. I have placed my faith in Jesus. You can too. The highest authority in the universe believes in Jesus. You can too. But many of us, we have a hard time trusting in Jesus in regards. We see that, man, Jesus helps those people, but he wouldn't or couldn't help me in my situation. And I hear that a lot, and that's a very great question. God, why didn't you help me? God, why aren't you here? Why aren't you talking to me? We see these stories in the Bible, all these people were healed, and that's great for them, and I believe that God can do that, but he hasn't done it for me. And so we tend to think, man, either God is silent or he doesn't care. And that brings us to the third truth. And that is that Jesus loves you more than you love you. I want to say that again. Jesus loves you more than you love you. You're like, that's a little weird. And it is. And I got to explain that. Because here's the deal. We love ourselves. You want to survive. You do things in life to enjoy it and to have happiness. And you try to live the best life possible. And there's a sense of, man, I appreciate me. And that's not in a sense to be prideful or egotistical, but there is an inner sense of love that you have for yourself. And God is saying, look, I love you more than you could ever think of loving yourself. And because of that, I care about you. But you might think, but man, my life, I don't know if I can trust him, but okay, watch this story, what happens. Verse 7, here's what Jesus says to the guy. Verse 7. Verse 7, that's going to be later on. Oh, we just had a bingo. And God said, go wash at the pool of Siloam, which means sent. The man went and washed, and he saw, okay, go wash. I don't know if you caught this, but remember the guy is blind. Blind man. Jesus says, go to this pool and wash. Okay, let's put up I created a little graphic of what this guy had to do. We can put that up. Great. So Jesus is around the temple because of the story that happens. And he needs to go to this pool, the pool of Siloam. That's between 1.25 miles away. Now, I don't know exactly where his conversation happened, but Jesus is telling a blind man to walk through the streets of Jerusalem to find this pool. Jesus, what are you thinking? Why are you telling this man to go for a walk when he can't even see? That's not fair. Like, okay, you might even think that's kind of shady, Jesus. Come on. Jesus, I know you have the power. Why don't you just, boom, see right there. Move on with your day. Like, all right, healing for you, healing for you, healing for you. Why? You have the power to do it. And you're going to make this poor blind man who's been blind since he was born, you're going to make him walk 1.25 miles down the road while blind, hoping to not kill himself. And then look at this, look at this. You see how there's stairs there in the now? Jesus told him to go downstairs. He's blind. Go down the stairs. Like, come on, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? This guy's going to slip and fall and break his neck, and then Jesus is going to have to resurrect him from the dead. I don't know. Maybe something's going to happen. But what is Jesus thinking here? Jesus, you don't know anything. You should have just healed me right here, and then we could both be unaware. Sometimes, Jesus, you didn't speak the way I wanted you to. You didn't heal me the way I was expecting. You didn't do for me what I wanted you to do for me, and therefore, I can't trust you because your ways are not my ways. And then we realize maybe we were the ones who were blind all along. What do you think happened to this man while on this journey? This half-mile journey of him walking down the streets blind. The things that were going through his head. This is crazy. This is insane. I have no idea where I'm going. This man who I have no idea who he is told me to start walking. And in walking, I don't even know what's going to happen. I can't see. I don't know if I will be able to see, but the guy told me to do something. You know, that guy could have sat there for the rest of his life. He was born. He was blind. He could have just said, you know what? I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm comfortable sitting in traffic for hours and hours. I know I'm going to die one day like this, but I'm comfortable here. He could have just stayed there. But he decided, you know what? For whatever reason, I'm going to trust this voice who's talking to me, and I'm going to take that step of faith. I'm going to go off on that dirt road. I'm going to start going. I don't know where it's headed. I don't know if I'm going to die in the process. I don't even know what the future holds. But this guy who talked to me gave me a sense of hope, and I'm going to walk in it. And on this journey, the man developed something. Because you see, the man, I'm sure like the rest of us, he had 27 problems that day, give or take. How many of you guys have a few problems in your life right now? A few problems, great. Sometimes we read the Bible and we see Jesus heal someone. They're like, oh my gosh, their whole life was made better. And the guy's like, go off skipping. And no, they're real humans. The guy had 27 problems. Jesus heals him. He now has 26 problems. But he still has problems in his life. He has to figure out and go. The healing is not this magical end all. You see, it's the salvation that Jesus really wants us to get. And so Jesus, instead of just saying, hey, here you go, you can see again. It's not going to help this guy's problem. It's not going to help his life. Jesus says, look, I'm going to put you on a journey because on that journey, you're going to learn something far greater than what the miracle itself will provide. And the miracle will merely be a reminder of who I am in your life. You guys might be there asking for a sign, saying, God, who are you? Are you real? God, give me a sign. And God, you're in church right now. That's the sign. The next step is to get out on the journey and see where God leaves you. To take that step and say, God, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to trust in you for one more step. And then I'm going to trust in you for one more step until you get to that pool. If all you want is for God to perform for you, for God to do tricks for you, to do these miracles, you're placing too little of a demand on God's power.
Not only that, if you're just saying, God, give me healing, God, give me this trick, God, give me this trick, I feel like God would say, look, he wouldn't say this. Here's my response to that. If you are asking God for a magic trick, I am saying, stop making God your dog. Stop asking him, give him a treat. Make him something real to you. God didn't come to be your dog. He came to be your Savior. That's the reality of what we do sometimes when we're like, hey, God. So what happens is this man, he gets healed. He goes on this journey. And we learn a little bit about him after. And that's because the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they get all upset. And they're like, who healed you? Why are you healed? And they start accusing him and going after him. And here's what the guy says in verse 25. The guy answered, look, whether Jesus is a sinner, I don't know. One thing I do know, though, is that I was blind, but now I see. You can have whatever theology you want to have. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But this guy, Jesus, put some mud on my face. I was blind, and now I'm not blind. You can't deny that. You can't stop that. You can't say anything to that because I was blind, but now I see. One thing Donnie Moore says that I love is a man with an argument is never at the mercy of a man with an experience. The guy experienced Jesus. You can't take that away from him. You can't rob that because he's like, look, I was blind, but now I see. And so then he continues on because they're like, oh, no, and they're all upset. And the guy continues going on. I think this is brilliant. This blind man who's never read in his life because he's blind starts educating these Pharisees who are super well educated. They say, well, as for this Jesus, we do not know where he comes from. Who is this guy? And the guy answered, why is this an amazing thing? You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God, he does God's will, God listens to him. And he continues. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't do anything. They answered him, well, you were born in utter sin, and you're going to teach us? And they cast him out. You see what this guy's doing? He's like, look, here's logic. I was blind, and I'm not blind. No one has ever healed people being blind in history before. Therefore, this guy we're talking to must be something significant. He's got to be sent by God because no one else has this power to do so. And they're like, no. Do you see the irony in this? It's the guy who didn't know anything that was the one who could see. And the religious leaders who had grown up in church, they were the ones who were blinded to what God was doing. Are you blind? Are there areas where you're not letting go, where you're not trusting in Jesus? And then it all comes together in this last section, verse 35. Jesus heard that they had cast the guy out. And so Jesus found him and said, do you believe in the Son of Man? The guy answered, and who is he, sir? Remember, he never saw Jesus' face at this point. So who is the Son of Man? That I may believe in him. And Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. And the man said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. This word believe in the Greek really comes down to this idea of trust. Lord, I trust in you. And in a way, he's saying, look, I am bound to believe in Jesus. I am bound to stand beside him because of all that he has done for me. And that is our example. I am bound to believe in Jesus because I can see all that he has done for me. Not just the external healing, but the internal healing of my soul. And that does not mean that I am perfect. It merely means that I am choosing each day to continue to walk on that journey, even when sometimes it seems like it doesn't make sense, because I believe that Jesus loves me more than I love me. And when I trust in him, I know that he will direct my paths. I'm going to invite the worship team to come up, and here's what I want us to do. Is there an area of your life where you're having a hard time trusting in Jesus? Where you're having a hard time and you're just like, man, I don't know because my family or whatever. Is there an area where you're processing through? And it may not even be a thing of like, man, I'm just blatantly not trusting in Jesus. It might be hey, I know I need to trust in Jesus, but it's a bit of a struggle right now. It's a struggle to take that next step, and I'm kind of bouncing between. I want you to write that on your paper. Because what we're going to do is we're going to break up into groups, and I want you to break into some small groups of people that you're comfortable with. I'm going to invite you to share one of your struggles with them. Now, they're not going to give you magical advice. They're not going to look at you like you're a crazy sinner, because here's the reality. We all have struggles. Look at the person next to you and say, I have a struggle. Look at the person and say, I have a struggle. Great. Now, none of us are liars, at least. We all have struggles, including me, of places where it's hard to trust in God. And so no one's going to look at you being like, oh my gosh, you're not trusting in God for that? Because we all have different struggles. We all have different things that we struggle to trust in God for because of our past. But in being open and saying, you know what? I'm struggling trusting in God with this. And being honest, guess what those people around you are going to be able to do? They're going to say, we're here with you. There is hope. And you'll be able to pray for each other and strengthen each other. That is what the church is about, coming together to support one another. Coming together to help you break through the blindness so that God can open your eyes and your heart to an amazing life with Him. Go ahead and break up into some small groups. If you don't know anyone here, it's your first time, stay seated and we'll help you get connected. But I hope this is a time for you to draw in to trusting in God.